Okay, hello. My name's Heather Gelb. I'm originally from Colorado and Ohio, and I've been in Israel for the past 19 years, about 6 of them in a yeshuv north of Jerusalem called Eli, and then the past 13 years here in Alon Shvut. But growing up, actually Aliyah was never part of my plan. It just became part of my life relatively late in my life. It started in the summer of 1990 when I was on the Livnot Ulihipanot program in Tzfat. And it's a program that really caters to Jewish youth with a very little Jewish background, and they kind of give you a balanced program with Jewish studies and community service and a love of the land. Like they took us on Tilim all over Israel, trying to help us find some kind of a bond or some kind of connection to being in Israel. And so on that program, something happened, that some seeds were planted, and I also met my future husband on the program. At the time we were just friends, but we parted, promising to stay in touch. So upon leaving the program, I ended up finishing college and then going into the Peace Corps in Rwanda. I was 2 years working in the health field in the middle of Africa, surrounded by churches and really nothing Jewish. And ironically, being so cut off from a Jewish community, like whatever planted and leave notes started to sprout because it made me really miss being in a Jewish community. It made me really appreciate what it could be like living in my own country. And while I was there, I had stayed in touch with the man I met on Leave Note, Joe. And he had come to Israel and was learning in Efrat, in a learning program in Efrat. And he was sending me letters. Not email, there was no email. It was all snail mail, and it took a month for me to get a letter from him and a month for him to get my letter, so 2 months in between our correspondence. And he had sent me a humash, and he became my long-distance chavuta. He would write down what he was learning in class, and he would ask me to look up the verses in the humash, the Torah, and then I would think about it, then I would read on about what he had to say. So that went on for a little while, and we were also talking about Israel and our future families and what would I do after the Peace Corps, kind of subtly coming closer together until we started talking about actually, being serious, maybe really getting together seriously and thinking about raising a family. And before I know it, he's flying out to Africa to meet me. This was about the time that things in Rwanda were heating up and we were forced to leave because war was starting. And he had met me at an airport in Nairobi and brought me back to Israel just in time for Pesach. So and after that I went to the Israelite program. And it was while in the Israelite program, we're also being back in Israel and the whole feel of it, we became engaged. And that all part came together really nicely. And we decided that, yeah, we're going to get married and we have to live in Israel. But first, a lot of people, they make this plan, right? The 1-year plan, 2-year plan, 5-year plan. So we decided a 2-year plan. We got married a few months later, September 1993, and we lived in Elizabeth, New Jersey. So we're thinking, okay, we'll spend 2 years. Joe will finish his degree. I'll find some work and then we'll move. But God had other plans for us, which is a good thing because just 3 months after moving to Elizabeth, we suddenly met up with a friend from Israel who was visiting, and we asked him, how are things in Israel? And he told us, you have to come now. Now is the time to come to Israel. They just signed the Oslo Accords, and we need more Jewish families in Israel. Please come. And we talked about it and said, he's right. Israel needs us. What are we doing in America? Why should we struggle in America when we can go to Israel and really make a good life for ourselves and be at a place where we're really needed? So we did it within a month, pretty much. I mean, that was in November. By February 1st, we had our lift together and we were on the plane to Israel. So it shows you that when you really want to do something, you can make it happen quickly. You don't have to keep putting off and putting off. And so we ended up moving to Eli because we had friends there. And we lived with friends for 3 months until a caravan became available. And then we moved into the caravan, and a few months later, my first child was born. And we ended up buying a house, really putting our roots down. And then we decided after 6 years that we really would like to try living in the Judean hills. We were in the Shomron, and now we thought we'd like to, by that time we had 3 children, we'd like to live in the Judean hills. So Also, we managed to find a place in Longfoot, which was not easy at that point. That was like 13 years ago. And since then, we lived in a few residences here, and we were able to, with God's help, get our own plot of land and build our own house. My husband built a lot of it on his own. And now we have 5 children, and my husband has his own business, and we just live, our backyard is Derech Avot, which is the path of the patriarchs. Like, we go out of our house and we have a horse, so we can actually ride a horse down on the paths that Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov had traveled between Hebron and Jerusalem. And it's just like amazing that this happened. And people think they're put off by, oh, it's too hard to live in Israel, it's too struggle, what if I don't have a job? We didn't have a job when we came, but it takes a lot of emunah. And now, 19 years later, since we made Aliyah, my husband has his own business and a lot of workers, and thank God, and we're raising a family, and we're doing good, Baruch Hashem. Right, so I'd like to encourage anyone out there who has their doubts, who has that fear of the unknown. Oh, what will happen if I get to Israel? What if it doesn't work out? What if the schools don't work out? What if I don't get the job? I mean, we've learned, if you learn from our story, is that sometimes you just go on the faith that you're meant to be in Israel, and Hashem will help everything come into place. It may not happen in the first month or the second month or third month, but if you're really determined to be here and you really feel you're meant to be here, then Hashem will make sure that your needs are provided for, and you'll feel like you really do. You'll finally find a way to call this place home and feel like it really is your home.